Seeing no public, no comments. Approval of the consent agenda. We have June check signing schedule set. So, did everybody have a chance to read the minutes?
I did, I was not here, so I don't know if I do the consent to approve, but yes.
Any questions?
I'll move to present the minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you. Second on the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for approval of the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion is approved. So Cheryl, you're up. You gave us some pretty complete financials this time. I was appreciative of that.
All right, that's good. Glad someone looked at it. I'm gonna try not to screw up this time, okay? All right, we are looking at March, 9th month of our year. Our total hospital patients for the month were 365. Our total average for this year so far is now at 320 because we had a pretty big month. Last year's average was 334, so I guess I kind of like that we are coming closer to where we were last year since we've seen so much steady decline in all of those numbers in the hospital, so that's a good thing. The average variances, 0 for hospital, and we're still down for surgical, and but that's because we're lacking a surgeon, of course. So overall, I think these numbers are pretty good. Inpatient was 43 and ED was 283. That's the main drivers of the big month. Looking at ancillary services, it's just crazy busy. You look at this March number compared to averages, you're way over average in all three of these categories. Year over year, percent increases, 7% for lab, 9% for radiology, 8.7% for rehab. These are big, big increases. Home health is down. That's, as we all know, home health goes up and down. It's just very unpredictable. It's a very small thing, so it's very sensitive to a few people. Health clinic is doing just fine, kind of steady, and Alturas Health Clinic has increased their patient counts quite a bit. Has a lot to do with the fact that we're not having Tony go to the candy anymore, so it doesn't impact, they would pay for his time in candy, so it's not making our revenue go up dramatically, but it does make that number go up dramatically. Any questions? Okay, gross charges for the month of March were $3.5 million. This is our second biggest month this year ever, of course, or ever. Our average right now is $3.2 million. Again, looking at the increases year over year, this is another good year.
Any idea on the approval at all?
They just did. We never got CPSI had a screw up, so we don't have the number yet, do we?
I don't know what the final gross charges were.
Yeah.
I know what collections were, and I know what days are.
We closed it, but there was a glitch with CPSI, and we had to put in a ticket, so, no, I don't know. I do feel like it was fairly busy. Don't you? It seemed like census was pretty high all month. Okay.
It's consistent.
It was consistently busy.
Typically, what we're seeing is, for the smaller months, you're seeing greater volatility. Whereas if we're staying at around 10 to 12, a fair amount, inpatient as well as swing patients. That's where you're consistently seeing. Does that make sense?
And radiology seems to stay very busy in clinics, volume steady.
We had our first day, I believe it was today, where the radiologist was here. Normally they come every other Wednesday, but as part of our revised agreement, they're going to come on the Wednesday and then stay overnight and then see patients Thursday morning and drive home Thursday. What that happened today was the first day that they believe it's the first or second time.
It's the first week.
It is the first time.
Yeah.
And they were constant all day yesterday, well, yesterday afternoon, and all day this morning. Now, how that will, whether that will continue or not, hard to predict, but you see the radiology utilization patterns.
Are they from Ponder?
No, they're coming from Bend.
From me?
So the group is called Central Oregon Radiology Associates, CORA, and they cover their main hospital in Bend, hospital in Redmond, hospital in Madras, Prineville, but then also John Day, Burns. And then they have an outpatient facility in the Bend area. They have 17.
We'll allow them
They do allow them?
because we share them with them too. That's why we're able to do such a significant amount of credentialing together.
So I didn't know, okay, so then, well, so they have 17 or 18 fellowship trained radiologists. So radiologists would mean they went to medical school 4 years, they went to residency 3 years, and then they did fellowship on top of that, of a year, sometimes 2. And they specify an area. So they have some that are, for example, the breast experts, they do 1 full year just on breast. Another interventional radiology, another in different kinds of areas within the field of radiology. So we have very competent radiologists covering these hospitals. And so for us to get, most of the small hospitals, they either get 1 day a month or sometimes 2, but most are at 1 day a month. For us to get 2 with a half on top of that, there's a reason for that. And they're seeing the same volumes. Sorry.
Okay. Collections on AR, we're looking at March, so March is here, and of course, this is one thing that we can show April, because we watch this daily and we can record it daily. We don't have to wait for the month to close to see it. March is $2.5 million, April was $2.45 million. So very good months, 2 in a row. Good news. It's brought our average up to $1.9 million. And the other thing that I like about this is when I look at average gross charges, which are 3.2, when you net it with contractuals, you should expect to collect about $2.5 million, almost $2.6 million every month. So that means we are close to where we should be. So what we need to do is keep on doing what you're doing. All right.
Good job, Susan.
Thank you.
My team is awesome.
And so with that, at the end of March, our days in AR was 90. In April, our days in AR was 82, and the last time we ran it, which it depends on which day you closed. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what day it was, but last time we
I
ran it was
checked last
79.
night, 78.4.
78.4. So we're looking at it daily, as we should be. So we'll see that continue.
Good trend.
Yeah, great.
Days in the AR for the clinics is at 74, and it didn't really move much this month, which is not really surprised because we're really very laser focused on the hospital right now. Our days cash on hand did not move from 58, so it's still at 58 at the end of March. And so looking at all the cash we collected, the way that you calculate the days cash on hand is you take all of the cash that's in the bank that is non-restricted and divide it by the last 12 months of average expense. And we've had high expense for the last 12 months. I mean, I see it coming down a little bit, and we need to see it come down more. We've talked a lot about it. So, you know, the level of your expenses and also the timing of your expenses. I see we paid out a huge amount of AP at the end of March, so sometimes the timing of it bites you a little bit. But if we can keep collecting on our AR, we should see this number start to come up and continue to focus on cutting expenses. So I changed things up a little bit on this report. So what I'm showing you here is is actual, for the month of March, here's our actual, here's our budget and the variance, and then the prior year's March and the variance. So the highlights of that are, our net revenue is $2.86 million, which is over budget by $269,000, very nice, and over last year by $373,000, just for the month of March. Our wages are 1.3, we're really close to budget, we're $140,000 more than last year at this time, which I would have thought that number would have been bigger. Our net gain for the month is $142,000, we budgeted 27, we're ahead by 114. Last year for March, we actually lost 114, so we're $256,000 better than last March. Of course, I'm not very interested in individual months, I'm much more interested in year-to-date numbers. So here's the same thing, actual budget, prior year, and the variances. So 23 million in net revenue. We're only 212,000 off our budget, which I think is pretty amazing. We don't have a
Surgery is a
I mean, yeah, it really, that's crazy, and that has a lot to do with lab and radiology. We have $2.5 million more in revenue than we had year-to-date last year at this time. Our salaries and wages, we are 600,000 under budget. That's has a lot to do with your surgery department. Our materials and services are $766,000 over budget. So there's a few things going on there, because we know we're saving money on supplies, but we are using more supplies. A lot of it had to do with the moving, we've talked about that, but the level kind of seems to be static. So we're gonna start looking at why are we buying so much stuff? That's our next project. Because again,
Is that where the temps go?
yes, that is part of it, but but Lakeview Gardens isn't in here. So yes, we do have temps, but they don't have quite as big of an impact on the hospital as they do on Lakeview Gardens. They don't stick out as much. Sometimes they do, but there's more variance, you know what I mean? You get some, and you get them in PT and you have them for a while, that you don't notice them as much there because of the revenue that they generate. But but in the hospital, CNA, we have one or two, but at Lakeview Gardens, they have a bunch. So yes, you're right, that's part of it, for sure. And we'll look at that, because we've spent $1 million more on materials and services year over year. So that's quite a bit. So the net gain for the month was, or for year to date now, is at 279, which is darn close to what we budgeted, 32,000 more than we budgeted. Last year at this time, we had 748,000, and so we're 469,000 behind last year.
But if you take out the gift that we got last year,
Yes,
that changes the number quite a bit.
absolutely.
So just apples to apples comparing.
Okay, and then the balance sheet. So we've got February, March, last March, and last year at this time. Nothing surprising here. Our patient AR is down because we've been having good collections. Our fixed assets continue to or increase which of course has slowed down radically, but I still see a couple of small bills that are coming in from Detroit. Our accounts payable is down because we paid out a large amount at the end of the month. And our debt is increasing because we are borrowing to pay for the building. So month to month and year over year, those are kind of the recurring themes, and there's nothing. All right, so then we threw in the receipts detail. This is March, and of course we have April's information already because we keep it daily. And there's not really much noteworthy. Medicare, Medicaid, for the most part, stay pretty static. Blue Cross, commercial, all other commercial, private pay, and then what we're collecting from Lakeview Gardens, non-ER, would be taxes, everything else besides what, any other dollars that come in, donations, grant money, etc., and then bad debt recovery. So it really doesn't change much month to month. So questions on
Questions?
hospital?
Is that detail helpful?
Very nice.
Yes.
It shows a lot of work being put in by Cheryl to come up with that work. Appreciate it.
Cool, well, if there's anything else you'd like to see.
We want to make sure that the information we give you is relevant. I mean, there's always an enormous amount of information.
Data, yeah.
And so how do we help that become a tool to help you understand where we are?
Okay, Lakeview Gardens, year over year, they've had an additional 582 patient days. You know, the resident count has gotten to a nice level of 18 at long-term care, and they're full in the ALF with a waiting list, so nothing's changed there. Monthly revenue, we started breaking out the ALF at Lakeview Gardens. So Lakeview Gardens had 168, and the average now is 176. Excuse me. And the ALF had 37,000 in revenue, and their average is 28. Collectively, their average for the year is 204,000 a month, and for March, the total was 206. Excuse me. 206,000. Contract labor continues to be high, but maybe not as high as it was. So our loss is a little bit less than it's been. Really, we'd like to see it closer to 70, but it was 102 for the month. But overall, a pretty average month for the gardens. Balance sheet, again, no change really, month to month and year over year, because they don't have assets and because we don't accumulate cash there. Kind of boring. Like health medical supply, kind of boring. I mean, they just keep plugging along, good revenue, a good bottom line. Wow, did I do that? Sorry. Guess I hit something. So they had a net of $5,000. Year to date, they're at 22. The balance sheet also doesn't change. Don't keep a lot of cash or assets there, but questions? And I know we're in the middle of, I talked to Joey a little bit, but we are in the process of installing that new software, but we really aren't using it yet. I mean, we haven't got to the point of starting to use it, so we can see an impact on our billing or any changes there. And probably what it's going to cause is a delay in billing and a delay in collections, because that's what happens when you install new software. But I don't think we're going to have a lot of trouble.
June 1st is our target on
Any other questions for?
Sorry?
Refresh my mind what software you're installing.
It's called Brightree, and it's a DME software. It's
Oh, okay.
made just for,
Yeah.
yeah. So we expect that, we think that our billing and collections will increase quite a bit after we get it installed and fully functioning and move ahead, because we see there's a lot of inadequacies in the system we're using now, unfortunately.
What's the time frame? Is it?
Starting,
June 1st?
yeah,
June 1st is the target implementation date. They're right now going through training and hands-on education to get ready to use it.
Remember, we hired a consultant to give us advice on how to improve the services we're delivering. And a key part was throughout the old, bring in this new software. So we're following many of the recommendations.
Which brings us to Quentin.
Yeah.
You're up.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm Quentin Wilson. I'm the supply chain director here, and thanks for having me this evening. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of.
That's the labor, and that will advance it.
Okay. So while supply expenses continue to be an issue, we're diligently looking at creative ways to drive down the cost. And one of the things that we've done pretty well at is back in March of 2018, we signed on with a new group purchasing organization called Interim. And by doing so, we were able to take advantage of some pretty attractive contracting and pricing that they have. And then since then, we've taken advantage of additional opportunities that they've presented us, which ultimately, since March of last year through May of this year, 2019, we've accomplished saving a total of $157,000, a little over $157,000. A lot of this is making sure that we're getting the best contracted prices on the products we already use. And so there's not a lot of change that's happened thus far to achieve the savings that we've got. It's really just been making sure that we're getting signed on to the right agreements and at the right tier on those agreements. But the partnership with Interim and their regional subgroup, Strategic Resource Partners, has really been beneficial, I believe, because as they aggregate all of the buying from many hospitals, the smaller SRP group is about 13 regional hospitals in Oregon and Northern California. Interim is an organization that's primarily owned by Intermountain Health from Salt Lake City, and they're very large. There's another slide here in a second that talks about them, but that's where we're really getting to drive down costs, because the aggregated purchase volumes of all those facilities helps us negotiate better contracting. Some of the of note here. Sorry, I wrote it.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. So some of the savings of note. So the Ethicon agreement is a suture agreement where basically this $15,500 savings was just moving to a contract that was recently negotiated. We didn't change the products that we're buying. Ethicon typically doesn't. They're owned by Johnson & Johnson. It's not a company that really negotiates pricing, but Interim, with that volume that I spoke to, was able to negotiate a really attractive contract with them. So that saved us $15,000. No change, just on products that we already buy. And then one of the big advantages here is in August of 18, we changed distribution of medical surgical supplies. It's the majority of the supplies that are used in patient care here. We changed distribution from Owens & Minor, who we had a partnership for many years, to Medline. After the Strategic Resource Partnership Group, we all got together and really negotiated hard with the three major vendors, Owens & Minor, Cardinal, and Medline, and we were able to achieve pretty substantial savings. So we went from what we were paying for a markup with Owens & Minor for distribution was 6.47%. We got that down with Medline to 1.15% on national branded items, and then any Medline products that we buy from them, that's their own branded items, we don't pay a markup at all. So just off the top, that saved us almost $22,000. And honestly, the service, I think, is probably even more important. We've had very consistent deliveries. They've got the trucking delivery process dialed in. And so not only the cost, but the service has gone significantly. Along with that, so with the zero distribution on Medline products, there's a lot of incentive to try to move to their products when they have an equivalent that delivers the same level of care for patients. And so through moving to some Medline products from other brands, we also saved another $18,000. And we're continuing to look at opportunities there. So they have many of their own branded supplies that are equivalent or sometimes better at much lower costs. And so, for instance, we met with the clinical groups just last week, and we're going to be changing the bathing wipes and the oral care products, and that should yield additional savings. And the more we can do that, the more we can have that at zero markup and deliver better care. So, good news. And then last thing on the savings, on top of all this, as we use these different contracts, there's sharebacks and rebates that we get by using these. So in addition to the $157,000, the district also got $13,230 directly paid back as rebates. So that's where we're at right now in the year. We're looking at every opportunity to continue to optimize the tier, the tier level that we're on each contract, and basically the more volume we can put through each contract, the better tier pricing we can get, and so that lowers markup and cost as well. So it's an ongoing monitored situation. Our partners Interim, they run all of our purchasing through their analytics to make sure that we're optimized on all the pricing that we're getting on all the contracts.
Question, Quentin. How do you decide what members will be in your particular group? So they're kind of all over the map as far as geographical.
Right.
How is that decided?
It's really up to each individual organization to decide which group purchasing organization they elect to go with.
Okay.
There's a few other regional groups. I think St. Charles and Asante is with a group called Health Futures through Vizient as a GPO. So for instance, I mean, it's just usually long-term relationships, and unless something goes wrong, they stay with the group they're in. The nice thing about this smaller group, and against this, I guess, to show the hospitals, what we get out of this group is kind of unique because there's a lot of rural and smaller hospitals there, and so we end up getting a voice. We get a pretty good voice there. We really have a say in the decisions of the group. The group is sort of, well, it's directed by leadership from Samaritan Health System, but even at that, they're very upfront about advocating for the smaller hospitals. And that was one of the things that was very attractive about joining Interim versus some of the larger groups that are focused on the Portland metro area hospitals, where we don't really have a lot of say. They negotiate the prices, and you know, we're just in the room if we're lucky, and we sign on to those agreements. I really feel like we have a voice here. You know, plus it's a very collaborative group where we can share policies and ideas and thoughts, and we have similar concerns being smaller regional hospitals.
Thank you.
You get national pricing like on your food purchasing, Cisco and some of those?
Yeah, actually, when we implemented, one of the first savings we got was with the Cisco nutrition. I mean, it's not a lot, $1,600. Nutrition is very competitive. It's hard to negotiate much beyond, you know, some pretty competitive pricing with Cisco. I think also that Food Services of America, and I can't remember the other company, they merged recently, so that sort of took any negotiating power away from those two groups when they combined. But we're constantly looking at Cisco, and the main thing with Cisco, I think, is service. We really look close. I work with Tara often to make sure that she's getting the products that are of the highest quality, and that their deliveries are on time, and we're taking care of that kind of business. So right now we're happy with them, and you know, I've worked with them several times when we need to buy larger products. I think the flour refrigerator came from Cisco, and we were able to negotiate really great prices on things like that through them too. So, but one thing that I always do is I make sure that on major purchases especially, I always look to these contracts first, but if that's not the best pricing, sometimes we can get it elsewhere, and I'll definitely shop wherever we can get the best value. Any questions about the savings? I'm happy to go through the other slides. It's mostly informational, just kind of tells you a little bit about who Interim is, who Intermountain Health is, and who Strategic Resource Partnership is. If you have additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
The council meetings, do they fluctuate on where they're held?
Most of the time they're held in Lebanon. Samaritan, you know, they have Best Western right there on campus, and they get the best pricing. Most of them are held there. Occasionally they move, the group moves. We've had one in Bend, and that's just to, you know, get a different venue, and sometimes vendors are more apt to come if we change the location. The most recent one in February, we actually met in Portland, and had an opportunity to see the new distribution warehouse that Medline put up there. It's a more than 300,000 square foot building. It's very impressive, and they really kind of stood that up based on this entire group moving distribution. They had a smaller facility in Wilsonville, very near the Owens and Minor Distribution Center, but with this added volume, they needed to grow, and so we got a chance to see that, and that was kind of nice.
Thank you.
Do they do their own delivery?
They do. They have their entire trucking fleet. Unfortunately, that's one thing that we don't get to take advantage of because we are so remote. But most of all the other hospitals, their products are delivered in a Medline truck. Ours get transferred to a common carrier, but they hold the common carrier much more accountable than Owens and Minor did. And so we find that the time of the deliveries is very seldom outside of the window that we've agreed upon, besides the exceptions of the weather. But they've been really good at holding them accountable. And that was part of our negotiating process, was to make sure that we had assurances that, they would be delivering the best quality and services as possible.
Another example that we can't access, but along the 5 corridor, most of the hospitals don't do their laundry. It's done by the prisons. And we would access that but the shipping cost is too much. That's why we can't share in that savings.
You said done by the prison?
Yeah, the Oregon prison system.
We have a prison.
But they don't have the laundry facilities like they do, where they serve most of the hospitals within a reasonable distance of driving off that 5 corridor. Coasts don't have it, on the 84 they don't have it. But on that 5, everyone uses the DOC. Because it is so efficient, cost effective.
When you pay somebody 14 cents an hour, it's pretty cheap.
There are economies of scale.
They hold them very accountable to quality, that's for sure. I've actually visited that facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming in. Okay. Medical staff update. Dr. Hussey is not here.
Dr. Hesse is not here, and we didn't have any credentialing information, so it didn't make sense for him to be here this evening.
Okay.
So family things that came up that way.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Hussey. Next, employee recognition.
So this is National Nurses this week. So we have been trying to honor our nurses in lots of different ways. As we have lots and lots of other employees, sometimes we forget that core caring of our patients is our nursing staff. And I thought a lot about how we want to honor our nurses besides fruit and things that we give to them on a regular basis or during this week. But the best way to honor the nurses is to choose their leader as our employee of the month. That's Teresa Squires.
That's great.
So they do an exceptional job, and Teresa really does an exceptional job at really instilling quality and good thinking, future thinking amongst the staff. So Teresa is our employee.
Excellent. Okay, CEO report. Mr. Pike.
We've been a little busy this last month. A lot of things going on as always. One of the things that, amongst many that Susan's been working on, is our annual charge master review. Has been for the last week.
Last week, 3 weeks.
So this is a time when we look at opportunities for us to find ways that we are charging appropriately, or if we're not charging appropriately, how do we adjust so that we are in line with the rest of the market as well as what Medicare allows us to do. And We've had some pretty good suggestions on things that we can do, some things that we've had as suggestions year over year that sometimes we haven't quite accomplished, but we're working on getting those done. So that's an important part of making sure that we are charging the public accurately and appropriately.
Excuse me, Mr. Twait. If you wanted to go, there's no reason for you to stay unless you want to stay for the rest of the board meeting.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do that.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, very much.
Good. Next, Marcy Clark is our new interim director of nurses for long-term care. Thanks, Ben. She started on the 22nd. She's here on a 13-week contract as a temporary employee. But we're hoping that we can encourage her to stay. She seems to be getting along well with the staff, making some changes, and it's been an enormous relief for, as you can imagine, Melinda. So allow her to focus on the CNA training that we have not been able to do in the last several months because she can't do both jobs. So that'll allow us to get back in with CNA training to try and reduce our the number of CNAs that we have that are agency. Cost is very, very huge, as you can imagine. So hopefully that will work out. We'll see how we go. We do have the right to terminate the contract and hire her full-time after 5 weeks. So I'll be looking for that mid-June, see what we can. And we're already, of course, talking. So that's positive. The one thing that's very exciting is that the gift shop has generated a sizable amount of money. And they have elected to make donations to buy equipment, and department managers have requested in the amount of $15,118.90. Their the requests are, and we'll provide this to you so you can put it in the paper, $2,700 for the countertop blanket warmer in radiology, $2,100 in the replace the salad bar in the cafeteria, and $4,700. Well, it's a total of $6,300 in the lab for workstation for the blood bank and a Genesis blood collection monitors. So some really valuable items. Blanket warmer. Public health has asked for a digital scale. So we're very, very thankful about it. The hard part about the gift shop is they're running out of volunteers. And one of the enormous challenges that they're facing, and they came and talked to me about, is because of the number of volunteers, or those that are able, they may want to, but physically can't volunteer. They're pretty close to a point where they can't continue to and are asking us what can we do.
They
So-
can't continue to be open permanently or just part-time?
Might be able to be open sometime.
They've already cut their hours down on each side of the morning and afternoon, but there's been quite a few days in the recent past where we've had a phone call, somebody's sick, they can't find somebody to come in and cover, we've had to put a sign on the door that they're closed that day.
Could we advertise for them?
Do we, or did
Could we, or do we?
We have.
we do try to help where we can. So I asked for a couple things. A perennial request is that we relocate the gift shop to where the chapel is, and swap the chapel to maybe the storage place over here that used to be the pharmacy. You remember back some time ago? Still close to acute, but that would maybe give more visibility. We might be able to find additional volunteers. They've been frustrated that there's not enough traffic here.
But that doesn't affect the number of volunteers they have, does it?
Not really. They were hopeful that maybe if they relocated, that might encourage other people to want to be a volunteer. But it's still an issue. Part of our dilemma is, if they can't deliver, do we close the gift shop?
Is there a potential of a private business gift shop?
There's always a potential.
If they can't make it,
We
I'm thinking
might-
of a flower shop type place.
Well,
Something like that.
the flowers that we are selling, we have the refrigerator, but one of the local cut flower stores is providing it. And I think the gift shop gets a little bit of money, but almost all of it, they maintain it, the gift shop. So it's possible we could find somebody that would be interested in running it as a business. I don't know if it would make any money, so I'm not sure if anybody would jump on
It
it.
might not make us any money, but it might at least provide that service.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Is it run, are they all hospital auxiliary members that are volunteering for it?
Yes.
So the membership's going down and you have no.
Well, like with many organizations, they have a number of people that are members, but not everybody can work in that capacity. And so some are volunteers. They recently had a card party, as an example, were willing and interested in playing cards, but didn't have the ability to come in on a consistent basis and man or staff the gift shop. So it varies what everybody's abilities and interests are.
Charlie, when you start looking at relocation and that aspect, what I would like to see you do is to see if it would be feasible to do the coffee aspect and the gift shop kind of as one.
We had talked about that, if you remember, when we talked about doing the remodel. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It was more money than we had. But I think it absolutely would be a great way of combining that service. Problem space, where we put it. And then if we do that, who's going to run it? Very much so, I think it is difficult when people come to a hospital and they want to buy something for the person they're visiting, and we don't have that service. It's a missed opportunity for people to find something for somebody they would like to give to. What do you think we should, other things besides trying to find another interested entrepreneur to act as a manager of our gift shop?
Well, I'm wondering, that size of that chapel in my mind is not that big.
No, it's not, but we could take out that opaque window area and open that up and just have a chain across it, if you will, kind of like we do when we close the business office, that admissions space.
The gate.
The gate. And so if you open that up, and then you could roll things out without impeding the 8-foot corridor, you could make it allow for a little space. Very much like we do here, where we have clothing and things on racks.
They use a lot of corridor space, though.
They do. They do. And I've been thankful that that hasn't been an impediment to fire marshals' concerns about space.
You know, it seems to me like a move and an expansion or a remodel it seems to me like it would be more appropriate to do that if this were a really going machine here, and that it was really operating well. It would be a shame to make all of this move and then have to close it down. You see what I'm saying? It's,
The other aspect would be for the district then to participate,
Right.
staff.
A district employee to run.
Exactly, yeah, along with the coffee.
And the reason I'm asking this is, what are your opinions about this? How do you, it's a struggle for me. I believe it's a valuable service to our community. I am saddened that they're running out of volunteers to do it. We've talked a lot about relocating it, but we've tried what about, or what, a lot of what ifs.
And you can see at a $15,000 contribution to the hospital, that's the auxiliary working for free for an entire year.
Right.
To be able to generate 15,000. If we hire an employee, you won't have 15,000, you will have a deficit. Now, does it mean that we shouldn't have this facility? I think we probably should, but if we move it out front, are we going to get that much more in sales and everything to justify
I don't think
a
you're gonna change your
$40,000
sales.
employee? It's not going to happen. So
and I don't think out front is a very appropriate place for a lot of things pulled out of the gift shop and in the hallway. I think that can be a distraction.
Although most places you go, the gift shop is about the first thing you see. You walk in the door.
Well,
But it's self-contained in most places.
And it-
Oh, yeah,
Everything is
yes,
inside.
it's not just,
It's not out in the hall.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
What would happen to your barista sales if you moved that facility over here?
I don't know that answer. We could certainly, there are things that we could do to test that. One of the things that we find, that who really shops at the gift shop and who really shops at the coffee shop, predominantly employees. And so if you relocate it, you're probably not going to lose the employee purchases. People are coming in for testing and they can't consume anything. It's an irritant.
But the moment you're done.
Then it works like a champ. Then it works like a champ. So I don't know. I'm surprised. I recall vividly when we had somebody advocating for the coffee bar, and I kept thinking, this is never going to fly, but I'll go along with it. And I was absolutely 100% wrong. It has been a very, very positive, especially for employees, but for the community. And a lot of people stop and talk
And the
and buy
location
things.
is right there in front.
That's right, it's easy. You see it, you walk in.
But I wonder how many customers use that versus employees.
You know, we could do a poll. We could find out. I really don't know.
Yeah. I could see where you could move that over here and that attendant that's already being paid could run the cash register, for instance, for your other sales. That would lighten the load for your volunteers.
There's, when we do that, when we start that conversation, we're changing from should we manage the gift shop as a district employee, from should to how. So if what I hear you saying is, maybe that's something we ought to think about, is that the district do that.
If it combines the barista with the clothing sales and one person could handle both. it might-
Yes.
Not entirely.
The concept that should happen.
And it's not necessarily expected that there won't be any volunteers. There may be still volunteers that can and would like to help in the gift shop, but they're having a hard time with consistency.
They're probably like all of the other service groups in town, aging, and not getting younger people involved.
That's absolutely true. And what they're saying is the older ones are more frail, and we're not getting younger retirees or people that have time.
Who does, I mean, is there a specific person who does the buying for the gift shop?
They have.
And is that person still working?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. She was in and out for a little bit, but she's back to it, and she's gotten with Holly. I think the plan is not, we just had a payroll notice, they want to try to get a poll out again to the employees and possibly the public to try to see is there, different types of items that they should be offering, to see if that would boost some of the sales too, but it's hit or miss.
We've had differences of, different people have worked buying, some have done a better job than others. And so there's a learning process. And if you're a volunteer and you don't necessarily know how to run a retail business or what people are interested in buying, sometimes you buy things that aren't exactly perfect.
You'll have a buyer buying what they want, not what.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is a little unusual that hospital gift shops have clothing. I've been in a number of hospital gift shops that
Usually
they're gifts,
Yeah.
or flowers, and flowers, but
Well,
not much
again,
clothing.
if a lot of the purchases are done by employees, and it's convenient because they can buy them on their payroll deduction, and they're the ones that are buying clothes, then we're really providing a service
Yeah.
to employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, there's-
So, we'll proceed into looking at these things and come up with some plans. Good. I appreciate that thoughtful discussion. That helps us. Another very exciting gift that we received, I believe we sent out to you, we received from the Collins McDonald
Yes.
Trust, a gift of $100,000 to be used toward the purchase of one of the 2 ultrasound machines. Now, we are budgeting, but we're trying to figure out, they're pretty pricey. I think 2 together is $375, if I have it right, $375,000. So we're fairly confident at the rate we're going that we could keep 2 ultrasound machines operational simultaneously. Part of that challenge is really equipment. So if we do move to buy 2 new ones, the one that we have, the main workhorse that we have several in other locations, is getting close to 5 years old. And the thinking has been we would replace both of them, or both, we would replace the one, buy 2, take the one that we currently have, put it in clinics, so that the doctors can do an assessment, thinking, oh, well, that might harm our volume. It really does, is it facilitates the physician to say, yep, I want to have a radiologist read this and tell us exactly what we have. So it wouldn't necessarily reduce our volume. But we might have to relocate our ultrasound service to the West Clinic so that we have both located in the same place. Because we don't have enough space. One of the competing interests for that gift shop was a second ultrasound room. As we work around space, we try to figure out what makes most sense. And anytime you hit on those walls, it gets to be expensive. So,
Did you tell us where the chapel would go if you were to move something into the chapel area?
there's been 2 suggestions. One is to put the chapel where the current gift shop is.
Oh, yeah,
It
okay.
would be smaller, and that's important. But the second place is over here by the entrance to the old long-term care, just to the north of that. That space, it's now the gift shop storage room, but it used to be the pharmacy. And it has an outside window, so we wouldn't feel quite so, not claustrophobic, but it would make it feel smaller if you were in the current gift shop. So those are the two places of all the suggestions that people have come up with on where we might look.
Neither one of those is as good as the present location as far as somebody really using it.
That's right.
That's right.
The challenge that we
exactly right.
face, excuse me, the challenge that we face is it doesn't get used quite as much as we would like it. Part of it is that people grieve in different ways. They use the family space much more, or they close the door in the room where the patient is. But we still use the gift shop for quiet time for employees or for visitors. So it is used, but not quite as much as we. Well, remember, the time is right for the right person at the right time. So it doesn't matter the volume. Okay, we'll come back with a plan on the gift shop. Next, probably most important for today is the EMS building. Give you an update on what's happening with that. We have advertised to the contractors. The plans will be finished tomorrow, I'm sure, so that we can provide those contractors that want to bid on it with a set of plans, and they will give us a fixed price. I've been assured that they can complete it before the end of this calendar year, because please remember, the covenant of our bond says construction has to be completed by the end of this year. So there can't be any additional work going on. We do not have a letter from the EMS group as of this writing that says that they have offered to pay a portion of the construction cost. They have verbally said that, they have not put that in writing. I've asked for it, and hopefully we'll have that. And my goal was to have you a proposal in March. If we don't have it by June, I don't think we can complete the project.
I don't mean, I can tell you from experience, just getting commercial approval through the state is terrible.
I understand. I hope that the commitments that I've received verbally are lived up to. I can't push any harder.
Any particular amount that they have agreed to, or is it still nebulous?
The number that I have been told verbally is $250,000.
Okay.
I have not seen anything in writing, so please don't hold them to it. It's what I have been verbally told by some members of the group. I do have an attorney working on a lease agreement. If you recall, it'd be hard to remember. In the bond document, the loan document, it specifically spelled out what kind of an arrangement we could have with the ambulance group. And it spells out the particulars on a lease agreement, how it cannot be the length of the life of the building, how it has to cover these certain things. So we have an attorney working on drafting up a lease agreement to make sure that it is done per the bond issue. If I have answers for you before, we'll call and ask for an interim board meeting. Otherwise, I can't make it go any faster. I'm sorry. We have not moved on two things that are still yet to be completed for the clinic remodel. One is the signage. Remember, I've shown you what the signs would look like. Cost for that is about $22,000. And the second part is the parking space. Detroit has said that if they get the contract to build the EMS building, then the company that they would hire to do the groundwork would do it at the same time as addressing this parking space, or a space that would be a parking space. If you recall, in our original plan, we did not, we had it in the budget and we took it out, so we couldn't afford it. Does everyone remember that? Yeah. So they're estimating the cost would be $130,000 to put in a parking space here, just to the west of the clinic. That's where we stand. Any questions that I could try to address? I think I told you in December, we had our assisted living facility inspected. And they're required from when we open, within 6 months, to do their initial inspection. Did their inspection, found a couple of things that they wanted to have corrected. Very common that you find something. And we had our second inspection to make sure that we have done what we, after we prepared the plan of correction, we have done that. And that was completed, and we are completely clear. So we will not be inspected for another 2 years. You know, so that's a positive thing. So all restrictions have been removed. So they're saying you're doing a good job. So that's a good thing too. And it seems to be that our customers are pleased as residents of the system. We are going to begin negotiations with the Oregon Nurses Association on the 22nd of this month. So that'll be a Thursday. It'll be a Thursday and Friday. That also coincides with the beginning of our budget meeting. So we'll negotiate in the morning, and then we'll have the budget meeting in the evening. We've tried to guess what we think the negotiated rate or any kind of increase might be. It's the best we can do.
So when's the budget meeting?
The budget meeting is on the 22nd, and I believe it's at
23rd.
like I said, 23rd.
Then there's a 5.
Is that what it is?
Yes, 23rd at 5.
Okay. I gave out to you some information about some of the activity that's going on in Salem right now. And this is information that I received because of my role on the board of the association. And so it has a little bit more information than is generally available. You might want to keep that to yourselves. And when you're done, you can pitch it. Even today, I think there were some additional changes of who's doing what didn't get approved, and is the governor going to have to come back. It's a very fluid process.
It would appear that we're going to get a gross receipts tax, so
It does?
it appears to be, yeah.
It was tenuous as of Monday, and
The Republicans walked out, but we're going to vote on it Tuesday.
they were out again today.
Oh, they're out today?
Yes. So that put one of the legs of the stool for Governor Brown's Medicaid budget, or OHA budget, is at risk, but I'm not sure where it's going to go next. One of the issues that is in the material you have is on the community benefit definitions. It doesn't impact us quite as much, but it does impact those hospital systems that have joint ventures with physicians. So it gets very complicated with bigger organizations. So some of this isn't quite as relevant from our standpoint, but it is on the statewide basis. I have the great pleasure of spending a couple days in Salem next week. We're on Summit, where we'll be, again, meeting with legislators. I've done this now multiple times. I think it's very helpful to be able to, because they allow us, because there's a number of rural hospital CEOs that attend, to talk to the urban legislators, to know a little bit more about some of the challenges we face. So, I'm not sure we're making great strides, but baby steps maybe. Yes, Chuck?
What challenges have we got in our behavioral health at this point? Are you still trying to recruit more staffing?
Well, our psychiatric nurse practitioner will start the end of this month, so in about 2 weeks. She'll be actually located in the clinic rather than in the wellness center or those locations. We are pretty well staffed to manage the clients that we have. Now we're spending money getting people better trained at certain components that the state requires us to deliver, certain kinds of things. For the level of service that we're delivering, we're probably about where we should be. One of the ways we look at how well our staffing matches with what the money is we get paid what's called a capitation, so a monthly based on number of noses that are assigned in the plan. And then what we bill based against that capitation. When we took over 3 years ago, we were at about 30 to 40% of the total payment. So about 60 or 70%, we were sitting on the money and we weren't delivering care. We're now at 110% of that capitation. So we're actually billing more than the money that we get under capitation. Now, if somebody is already employed, we're not running additional costs. We're seeing more people. So if somebody sees 12 people in a day and then 13 people in a day, they don't have overtime, we haven't had additional cost. So it's a little bit of an indicator of how well we are doing in terms of delivering costs. It's not a real indicator that our costs and our revenue are not matching. Okay? But I think we are no longer an outlier. We were, Lake County was, where we weren't delivering enough care. We're doing a better job there. The wait time to get in to be seen by a therapist isn't extraordinary. In some communities, you can wait months. So part of it is how quickly can we get them in, get the care they need. Some of that is when someone starts into therapy and they're being seen over 6, 8 months, they have a tendency to become friends. Now they bring other issues and they just sort of talk about things from a friend standpoint. So we are better now at making sure our time spent with those clients is really therapeutic. And it's not just sort of social therapy. So it's there's a multiple of are we at where we need to be. I think we're getting pretty close. It is the best way I can describe it. There are still problems that come up. And sometimes we're doing a good job. We're getting better at some things. We have, right this moment, a situation where our Lakeview Gardens facilities are all locked down. We have someone who has made some inappropriate statements and some semi-threats. And so to protect the staff and to protect the patients, we are having the facilities locked so that people can't get get buzzed in, but, and that's right today, right now. So, is that person, are the individuals involved in this being seen in our wellness center? I can't say. But these are the kind of things that we have to do.
That segues to the other question. We talked about security staff.
Yes.
Where are we at with that?
So we have just finalized this morning job description that we think will work. I have some pay scales that I've worked on. Justin and another, Justin Westcott, in order to hire the security guards, he has to be certified by the state to supervise them. And then within 90 days, each security person has to go through that training. So first was to get him trained, or certified through the training. We have another employee that has done that. So we have job description, we have a wage, just about finished wage rate, and then we'll be posting that position. And our goal is to have them hired before the end of the year, end of this fiscal year. We've struggled with that because do we really, really, really need to have this? From a budget standpoint, we struggle with that time and again. But it is a problem that many of the small hospitals are beginning to face and are doing something about it. So we're not the only ones that are taking the step of hiring staff. Typically, it's 6 to 6 at night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and then on the weekends. So that's where we've been working on getting the steps done. Other questions?
Any other questions?
Those conclude my comments.
Okay. Do we have something for executive session?
I can always talk about it. We do have two things.
We do, okay. So we will close the regular meeting and go to executive